There have been 59 U.S. presidential elections so far. From Carter's defeat to hanging Chads to Obama's historic election. We take you back to some of the most memorable elections in recent history on a special edition of That Was the News Then. Our first election takes us back to 1980, when incumbent President Jimmy Carter faced off against Ronald Reagan. Here's a look at election night back then, when Carter lost to Reagan.
And now we're going to go back to our newsroom for the latest election results with John Rowland.
All right, Bill, Ronald Reagan is the next president of the United States, the 40th president. President Carter, as you saw early in our program, conceded defeat. The president said he called Mr. Reagan tonight and promised to work with him in a transition period. The president said, "I promise never to lie to you, so I can't stand here and say it doesn't hurt."
The people of the United States have made their choice, and of course I accept that decision. But I have to admit, not with the same enthusiasm that I accepted the decision 4 years ago. I might say,
John Anderson also called Mr. Reagan to congratulate him on the victory. It looks like the biggest defeat for any incumbent president since 1932, when Herbert Hoover was voted out of office. Mr. Reagan won New Jersey, Connecticut. He is leading in New York. In the popular vote, he now has 50% of that vote, while the president has 43% and John Anderson has 6%. That's with 27% of the voting districts reporting. In the important race for electoral votes, the president has won only 4 states that we know of so far, including Georgia, 25 electoral votes. He's leading in 5 other states with 49 electoral votes. Mr. Reagan has won 14 states. He's leading in 19 others for a total of 370 electoral votes. That's 100 more than he needs. In the race for Senate in New York, Republican Al D'Amato has a lead with 18% of the voting districts reporting. D'Amato has 48%, Democrat Elizabeth Holtzman has 41%, and the incumbent Jacob Javits has 11%. In the race for Senate in Connecticut, where the polls closed at 8, Chris Dodd has beaten Republican James Buckley. Dodd is a Democratic congressman, and his father, Tom Dodd, was also a U.S. senator. With 34% of the vote in there, Dodd has 58%, Buckley has 42%. And you might be interested to find out how the congressmen are doing who were indicted in the Abscam probe. Ozzie Myers was convicted, kicked out of the House, but right now he is leading in South Philadelphia. John Jenrette was also convicted. He is leading in South Carolina. But veteran Congressman Frank Thompson, who has yet to stand trial, is losing, and his GOP opponent Chris Smith is claiming victory. Raymond Lederer is also still facing trial. He's winning big in his Pennsylvania district. There are no real returns yet on John Murphy's race for re-election in Staten Island. Some of the biggest names in the Senate were targets this year of various conservative groups. One of them was Democratic Senator Birch Bayh of Indiana. He lost tonight to his opponent, Dan Quayle. Now, I'd been told earlier that we're going to have a report from Lonnie Reed on one group that's out to flex its political muscle on that. So let's go to that report right now, flexing its political muscle against the liberals.
The moral majority is led by the Reverend Jerry Falwell, pastor of a church in Lynchburg, Virginia. Claiming to receive $400,000 a week in contributions, the moral majority is against abortion, against the Equal Rights Amendment, and against SALT II. Furthermore, the movement believes that all of America's problems are the byproduct of moral decadence and runaway democratic liberalism. Although it has not officially endorsed him, the moral majority has made no secret of its affection for Ronald Reagan. And as we told you earlier, several of the best-known, most outspoken liberal Democratic senators were targeted for defeat by the movement. And tonight those efforts seem to have paid off in several races. This year, moral majority candidates have also scored upset primary victories in Alaska, Iowa, and Alabama. In doing so, the moral majority movement has generated a good deal of concern among critics who say that it constitutes a violation of one of our most fundamental principles, the separation of church and state. Needless to say, the moral majority movement is being watched very closely. The Reverend Jerry Falwell could not be reached for comment tonight on the apparent success that his movement is having at the polls. But Falwell says he will be in the New York area within the next 48 hours to stage a victory rally. If tonight's election results are any measure, the moral majority is gathering strength as a national political force. I'm Lonnie Reed, Channel 5 News.
Barry Cunningham, as I mentioned to you earlier, is at the Reagan headquarters out in California. We have this report from him now.
President-elect Ronald Reagan, the candidate of the Late Late Show, made it an early night for Americans watching TV, but Ronald Reagan in person is still keeping his supporters waiting here at his victory headquarters at the Century Plaza Hotel in Los Angeles. Reagan is not expected to arrive here for another 20 minutes, a full hour, after President Carter conceded defeat in Washington. Hundreds of jubilant Reagan supporters are waiting outside this ballroom, champagne buckets at the ready, but they will not be allowed inside to the victory celebration until their candidate is himself inside the hotel. Meanwhile, Reagan supporters and the rest of the nation awaits the arrival of Ronald Reagan, the voice of conservative America and America's voice in the White House for the next 4 years. Barry Cunningham reporting from Reagan Victory Headquarters in Los Angeles.
Good evening. You have to believe that all the so-called experts and poll takers are scratching their heads and kicking their computers. They all said the election was too close to call. Well, in fact, it was a landslide. President Carter only carried 6 states, Reagan 44. He rolled up so many electoral votes so fast the president conceded before the polls closed in the West. Reagan's popular vote was 10% more than Carter's. John Anderson only got 7%, not one electoral vote, but enough of a popular one so that he'll get tax money to help pay off the millions he owes in campaign debts. The voter turnout was the lowest in 32 years. Slightly more than half of the Americans who could have voted actually did. That continues the trend of voters dropping out, something that started back in 1960, and a trend that keeps getting worse. But still, the end result of yesterday's turnout was an overwhelming victory for Reagan and a humiliating defeat for an incumbent president.
I am not frightened by what lies ahead, and I don't believe the American people are frightened by what lies ahead. Together, we're going to do what has to be done. We're going to put America back to work again.
Reagan plans to hold a news conference tomorrow afternoon. He took a break today, just some quiet, low-key meetings. His chief of staff was busy, though. Edwin Meese said that Reagan is going to replace every single cabinet member and head of all the appointed agencies, not one holdover. Sometimes that's the case. Meese put his tongue in his cheek and said they all deserve a rest.
The election between Gore and Bush was a close call, with a recount that introduced us all to the words hanging chads and resulted in Bush being declared winner.
It was a huge protest in Times Square. Several people were arrested for disorderly conduct. Several hundred people demanded a fair count.
It's about democracy. It's about every vote. And, you know, if it was in the Bush camp, they would not be walking away either. You just can't walk away that easy.
The protesters also called for a second chance for voters who marked their ballots incorrectly.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous for people to start comparing the election of the presidency of the United States to a baseball game, and oh well, it's just too bad if there's a bad call, the game goes on.
The protest got started on the internet when disgruntled citizens started discussing the Florida election in discussion groups.
It was just a group of citizens who started coming together spontaneously on the internet. Just started yesterday afternoon, and it just spread like wildfire because people are so concerned about this.
And from the internet to the streets. But not everyone agrees with these protesters.
I'm from Missouri. If you look in any state, you're going to find those same kind of discrepancies and those same kind of ballots got thrown out. That's just the way it is. That's the way the rules are.
And Mayor Giuliani is checking in on this controversy with this unique perspective. Back in 1989, he lost a mayoral race by the closest election in a century. The same thing happened to David Dinkins in 1993. The mayor says that neither man called for a recount. Neither man took the election to court.
Got to come a point where you put the country ahead of your desire. So it's been recounted twice. George W. Bush is ahead. The vote is very, very close. The absentee ballots could push it either way. We don't know. And I think you should let it rest on the absentee ballots.
But protesters say it's not about absentee ballots. It's about what's fair.
But we're not here for any one candidate. We're here for the people. We're here for a hand count and a first count, not a recount, but a first count of the ballots.
The Palm Beach County Governmental Center has become the center of the political universe as the recount that may determine who becomes the next president of the United States plods slowly along. Media people are at least able to see the manual recount process through windows as county election workers examine ballots from 4 precincts that represent 1% of the 462,000 votes cast in Palm Beach County on Election Day. Republican observers and Democratic observers bicker occasionally. The county judge who's in charge of the recount told one election worker, "I'm losing it, I tell you." The man who doesn't want to lose this election through the manual recount, Governor George Bush, is watching from his ranch in Crawford, Texas.
We've counted once, and we recounted in Florida, or that everybody recounted. And we fully recognize there are some ballots outstanding from overseas, and the people ought to be included in the process. And it seems like to us that once those ballots are counted, we'll be able to determine who the president will be.
Al Gore stayed inside the vice presidential residence in Washington, meeting with his campaign chairman, William Daley, and former Secretary of State Warren Christopher, Gore's top recount observer. He defends the Democratic request for a manual count of the Florida ballots.
When doubts have arisen, the hand count is seen as the best way to ascertain the true views of the voters.
Former Secretary of State James Baker says the Bush campaign will ask a federal court for an injunction to stop the hand count and stick with the mechanical tally.
Machines are neither Republicans nor Democrats, and therefore can be neither consciously nor unconsciously biased.
In the Palm Beach County recount room, the process began with workers doing the so-called sunshine test, holding up disputed ballots to see if the voting device marked the ballot. But this evening they had to start all over again. Now they'll look to see how much of the perforated punch-out called chads made by the voting machine are still attached to each ballot.
If one of the 4 corners of the chad is detached, then that will be a vote.
This hand count of 1% of the votes cast here in Palm Beach County will last well past midnight. Depending on the result, a hand count of all more than 400,000 votes cast in Palm Beach County may be needed. On Monday, the Republican request for an injunction will be heard in federal court in Miami. In West Palm Beach, Florida, Bob O'Brien, Fox 5 News.
In 2008, it was an historic election as Barack Obama was elected 44th President of the United States.
Barack Obama opening up a lead tonight in his bid to become the first black president of the United States.
And let's take a look at the latest numbers as we have them right now. Barack Obama leads nationally with 50%. McCain at 49 with 17% of the precincts reporting.
Obama also leads in the Electoral College vote, 200 to 124.
And for the very latest right now, we're going to go to Craig Boswell, who is live in Chicago at the Obama headquarters, and a big rally going on right there. The weather has been fabulous for this tonight. They've been gathering all night.
They're expecting a million people. They really, you could see them going in there where all the people had their tickets, lots of security, really incredible. We're actually going to take a look. Yep. Craig Boswell is out there. Let's see what he files tonight.
Excited supporters rushed into Grant Park. Up to 1 million people are expected, waiting for a reason to celebrate after today's historic election.
The journey ends. But voting with my daughters, that was a big deal.
Barack Obama started his day early, voting at an elementary school near his Chicago home. A small crowd cheered as Obama and his wife, along with their daughters, showed their voter cards. And breaking with an Election Day tradition, he returned to the campaign trail in Indiana.
Hey, Veronica, this is Barack Obama. How are you?
Running mate Joe Biden also used every last minute, shaking hands and hugging supporters.
Thanks for voting.
The Delaware senator voted earlier with his mother and wife, Jill.
Craig Boswell reporting from Chicago tonight. A lot of action going on there. Let's get the latest numbers that we have for the race for the White House, and here they are.
We want to let you know that they are still coming in fast and furious in New York, a traditionally blue state. Obama is easily topping McCain with 52% to 42%. That, by the way, is only with 1% of the vote in.
And Obama has also taken New Jersey tonight. Obama has 49% to McCain's 43%. That is with 38% of the vote in.
All right, and put the nutmeg state, Connecticut, in the win column for Barack Obama as well, with 62% to McCain's 37%. That is with 30% of the votes counted.
And we also have Lisa Evers joining us live right now from Harlem with some reaction and see what's going on there tonight. What an exciting evening, Lisa.
Ernie, a very exciting evening for everybody, but here outside the Harlem State Office building with Senator Obama in the lead, this has turned into just one huge celebration. Now let me give you a look at the crowd here, a diverse group. It's grown to more than several thousand, all drawn here by a deep-rooted belief that history is being made here tonight.
This election means everything to me. It means opportunities for America. It's a triumph. It would be a triumph for African Americans from coming from an era of ignorance and deprivation.
This election will mean for me just have faith again in democracy in America.
Obama supporters came out early to get a spot at the rally organized by Harlem Congressman Charles Rangel and to watch election returns come in on a big outdoor TV screen.
It's just historic. It's monumental just to share it with my daughter and just be part of this. It's just incredible.
This election is so important because this is going to determine to see where our country is going. We already know where our country's been. This is going to be a significant step towards where our country is going and where all the different races and cultures are actually coming together.
The crowd erupted in cheers every time there was good news for Senator Obama.
Personally, it means everything. This is something I never thought I would live to see today, and now that it has come, I can't tell you how overwhelmed, how excited I am.
To see that we are united, we are one, we're not divided, we are one people, not black or white, we're just one.
Now, many of the people here told us that they waited on long lines in order to cast their ballot and that they're glad that they did. They don't plan to leave here anytime soon. Ernie and Derry, back to you.
All right, great pride there. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Senator Barack Obama did make history last night. The junior senator from Chicago is the first African-American to win the presidency with a resounding victory over Senator John McCain.
Obama gave his acceptance speech before a crowd of more than 100,000 supporters in Chicago's Grant Park last night. The president-elect dominated the Electoral College, collecting at least 349 of the necessary 270 votes needed to win. He understands now his new position is not only to lead America, but to lead the world.
And all those watching tonight from beyond our shores, from parliaments and palaces, to those who are huddled around radios in the forgotten corners of the world, our stories are singular, but our destiny is shared. And a new dawn of American leadership is at hand.
Following his historic win, Senator Barack Obama received a phone call from President Bush, who congratulated him on his victory.
All right. Well, New Yorkers celebrated Obama's victory late into the night. Several spontaneous parties erupted. Some were in Brooklyn, also in Williamsburg. Hundreds poured in the streets, cheering. And at 2 a.m., police in riot gear showed up to clear the road. Now, 3 officers were hurt and 8 people were arrested.
Thousands of people celebrated the historic moment at the crossroads of the world as well. A huge crowd gathered in Times Square to watch the election results. They erupted in cheers when Obama was declared the winner, and hundreds stayed to watch his acceptance speech on the big screens. Derry?
Well, a sense of exuberance continues in Harlem today. Sylvia's Restaurant commissioned an ice sculpture in honor of Obama's victory, and vendors, there it is, already selling T-shirts celebrating the 44th president. Many people in the community say they are inspired by the historic moment and look forward to Obama's leadership.
And that was the news then.